The first time Kenji felt truly exhausted, it wasn't his body that gave out. It was his soul. He was standing in the middle of a crowded Tokyo street, rain streaking down his hair, the neon lights flickering off puddles on the asphalt. Around him, life carried on, people laughing, talking on phones, rushing somewhere important. But Kenji felt invisible, hollow, like he was drifting behind a fogged window, watching the world move without him. He had slept, eaten, exercised, everything he was supposed to do, but nothing fixed the heaviness pressing on his chest. He thought back to the morning, to the weight of his alarm clock dragging him out of bed, to the coffee that tasted like bitter sand, to the blank faces he forced smiles at during meetings. Each step, each breath, felt like wading through mud. Even the things that once made him happy, his guitar, painting, walks along the river, now seemed distant, like relics of a life he no longer belonged to. Kenji was 32. He was smart, talented, and had friends who cared. But none of that mattered anymore. Each day was a slow, grinding machine that drained him before it even began. And tonight, as he stared at the reflections of neon signs in the puddles, he realized something terrifying. He didn't know how to keep going. He found himself wandering to a small, tucked-away bookstore he'd never noticed before. The sign above the door was weathered, the letters almost illegible, Kokoro Shoten. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and ink, warm and quiet, like a small refuge from the buzzing city. Books lined every wall, stacked in haphazard towers on the floor. And there, on a low shelf by the window, he found a thin, unassuming book titled The Way of the Sword by Miyamoto Musashi. Kenji didn't know why, but he opened it. The words hit him like a strike he couldn't anticipate. They were simple, almost harsh in their honesty. "Do not seek rest in the world," Musashi wrote. "Seek it in yourself. Strength is not given, it is awakened." Kenji closed the book, heart pounding. He wasn't looking for philosophy. He wasn't looking for self-help. He just wanted to stop feeling tired, stop feeling like a shadow of himself. Yet here, in these words, he felt a spark. Not hope, exactly. Not yet. But a flicker, tiny and fragile, that whispered he might still remember what it was to live. He bought the book. On the walk home, the rain had stopped, leaving the city damp and silver. And as he walked, he thought about Musashi, not just as a legendary swordsman, but as a man who had faced battles no one else could see, who had walked alone, who had forged a life of clarity and purpose from chaos. Kenji's apartment was small, dimly lit, filled with stacks of unfinished projects. He sank into his chair, opened the book again, and began to read, line by line, word by word. Musashi spoke of discipline, not the kind that comes from schedules or alarms, but from attention, from being present. "The mind must be like water," the words said. "Still, clear, and able to flow where it is needed." Kenji felt a lump rise in his throat. He realized he had been swimming against a current that didn't exist, fighting battles that weren't his. His exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was the weight of a mind constantly scattered, a heart constantly doubting, a spirit constantly apologizing for not being enough. He didn't know how to become like water. But he wanted to. The next morning, he tried something small. Instead of reaching for his phone, he sat by the window, watching the sunrise creep over the city. The light was soft, pink and gold, and for the first time in months, he felt a tiny sense of peace settle in his chest. It was fragile and fleeting, but it was there. He breathed in slowly, noticing the cold air in his lungs, the quiet rhythm of his heart, the way the world continued even when he felt like giving up. But old habits die hard. By noon, fatigue returned like a shadow he couldn't shake. The office was loud, full of chatter and keyboards and ringing phones. His eyelids felt heavy. His thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. He reached for his coffee, then his sugar, then the aspirin in his drawer. Nothing worked. That night, he walked again to the river. The water moved steadily, ignoring the city, ignoring him. He leaned on the railing, staring at his reflection in the dark water. And then he whispered, barely audible over the soft rush of the river, "How do I stop being so tired all the time?" No answer came, only the gentle lapping of water against stone. But deep down, he felt Musashi's words echo, strength must be awakened. Not given, Kenji didn't sleep that night. He just sat on the edge of his futon, book open, pencil in hand, jotting down every thought, every fear, every exhaustion that weighed on him. And in the quiet scribbles, he found a strange clarity. He couldn't keep living in half-life. He had to fight, not with swords, not with others, but with himself. The next days blurred together. Small experiments, walking instead of driving, stretching before work, limiting social media. None of them seemed to work at first. But something was shifting, a faint, imperceptible energy beginning to hum under his ribs. The fog in his mind lifted for seconds, then minutes, then longer stretches. He realized he hadn't felt awake in years, not truly. And for the first time, he began to glimpse the truth. His exhaustion wasn't a curse. It was a message. A call to attention. A warning that life was moving, and he needed to move with it, consciously, intentionally. Then came the night that changed everything. He woke to a dream, or maybe a memory. He was standing in a field, the wind cutting across his face, the sky wide and endless. An older man appeared, hair long, robe flowing, eyes steady. Kenji knew without thinking that it was Musashi himself. The man raised a hand, pointing to the horizon. "Do not seek to escape your fatigue," the figure said. "Face it. Understand it. Train it. And only then will you know what it means to be alive." Kenji woke with a start, sheets tangled, heart hammering. The city outside his window was quiet, but something inside him was awake, buzzing, electric. He felt fear that he had been asleep too long, that he had lost so much life in exhaustion. But underneath the fear, there was determination. Something fierce, primal, human. He didn't know what would come next. He didn't know if he could truly find the strength to awaken. But for the first time, he understood that the journey wasn't about shortcuts or magic pills. It was about courage, persistence, and attention. And in that understanding, a strange calm settled over him, like the river he had watched the night before. Then his phone buzzed. A message from a friend, a trivial thing, a joke. And yet it pierced him. He realized that life had been going on all around him, laughing, loving, living, while he had been trapped in exhaustion, watching from the sidelines. And a fire ignited. Kenji knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, he would wake up and face the day differently. Somehow, he would find the way. But as the night deepened, a whisper of doubt crept in, cold and insistent. Could he really do it? Could he really stop feeling tired all the time? Or was this just another fleeting spark, doomed to fade? He pressed his hands to his face, closed his eyes, and felt the weight of every wasted day, every lost opportunity, every moment of self-neglect. The exhaustion was still there. It was waiting. And it was powerful. Kenji didn't know it yet, but the hardest battle of his life wasn't the city, the work, or the endless noise. It was himself. And it was about to begin. The next morning, Kenji woke before dawn. The city outside his window was dark, the streets slick with dew, the occasional car slicing through the silence with the hum of headlights. His body ached, still carrying the remnants of weeks, months, of fatigue. But the fire in his chest, fragile though it was, pushed him out of bed. He remembered Musashi's words from the dream. Face it. Understand it. Train it. The exhaustion wasn't just a symptom. It was a mirror, reflecting every corner of his life he had ignored, the missed moments, the scattered mind, the self-abandonment. Kenji began small. Not with grand gestures, not with promises he couldn't keep. He started with a single, deliberate breath. He felt the air enter his lungs, cold and sharp, and let it flow slowly out. Over and over, until he noticed the pulse in his wrist, the steady rhythm of life still moving through him. Then, he moved his legs. Slowly. Stretching, bending, feeling muscles wake that had long been asleep. The first movement made him ache, but it was an ache that spoke of awakening, not defeat. Days turned into a rhythm, a ritual he hadn't known he needed. He walked longer, sometimes 2 hours along the river, feeling the cool mist against his skin, the way the water never paused, never stopped, never yielded. And in that relentless flow, he began to see himself. Not the hollow, tired shadow he had been, but a man capable of motion, of persistence, of clarity. Yet progress was uneven. One morning, he would feel light, alert, ready to tackle the day. The next, he would stumble out of bed, eyelids heavy, stomach knotting with dread, every bone protesting. Each relapse felt like failure, a reminder of how far he had fallen, and that fear gnawed at him. The thought of never escaping this fatigue, of being trapped in a life half-lived, made him restless at night. He wrestled with it alone, sitting in the dark, pencil in hand, scribbling reflections, frustrations, and fleeting victories. He began experimenting, not just with body, but with mind. He noticed the way his thoughts wandered, endlessly scrolling through worries, regrets, and what-ifs. Musashi's words echoed again. The mind must be like water. Still, clear, able to flow where needed. Kenji realized he had never trained his mind. It was wild, untamed, and exhausted from carrying burdens it was never meant to bear. So he trained it. Not with force, not with guilt, but with attention. He focused on each task, washing dishes, boiling water, folding laundry, as if it were the most important thing in the world. The mind protested at first, rebelling with frustration and fatigue. But slowly, imperceptibly, clarity emerged. It was during one of these silent evenings, sitting cross-legged on his futon with the book open, that Kenji truly understood the depth of his struggle. The exhaustion he had lived under for years wasn't laziness, wasn't weakness, it was misalignment. His body, mind, and spirit had been moving in different directions, a discordant symphony. And no amount of caffeine, sleep, or shallow motivation could fix that. Only alignment, attention, and deliberate action could awaken him fully. Still, temptation and fear were constant companions. He would see friends laughing on social media and feel the pull of apathy. He would lie awake, imagining all the energy he should have, all the missed mornings, all the wasted potential. At times, he wanted to give up, to surrender to the familiar fog, to hide under blankets and pretend the world could wait. But Musashi's image returned, the calm, unyielding presence of the older man in the dream. And Kenji remembered, strength is awakened. Not given. One evening, exhausted after another long day of walking, meditating, and struggling to stay present, Kenji collapsed into his chair and opened the book again. His eyes caught a passage he hadn't noticed before. Perceive that which cannot be seen, understand that which cannot be spoken. Fatigue is a teacher. Listen to it. Kenji's heart sank. A teacher? Could he really learn from this endless, grinding tiredness? He closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. And for the first time, he listened. He asked himself what his exhaustion was trying to tell him. Was it fear? Was it avoidance? Was it the years of neglecting his own needs in favor of doing what others expected? Answers didn't come all at once. They came slowly, in fragments, a tightened jaw, a racing heart, the heaviness in his chest when he ignored small warnings from his body. He began to record them, noticing patterns, subtle signs that had gone unnoticed for years. He experimented further. Instead of pushing through fatigue with caffeine or sheer willpower, he rested when needed, intentionally, consciously, without guilt. And when he moved, he did so fully, deliberately, with attention to each muscle, each breath, each heartbeat. The first time he felt this balance, a small smile crept onto his face. It was not triumph, it was awakening, but inner growth alone wasn't enough. Kenji realized he had to face external challenges too, the work that drained him, the relationships that sapped his energy, the habits that kept him chained to exhaustion. He started setting boundaries, small ones at first, saying no to late-night meetings, avoiding conversations that left him depleted, carving time for silence and reflection. The changes were met with resistance. Colleagues questioned him, friends doubted him, and sometimes even his own mind rebelled, whispering that he was selfish, weak, or lazy. Each moment of doubt was a test. Each whisper of fatigue a temptation to return to old patterns. And each time he resisted, he felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Pride, clarity, a glimmer of energy he thought lost forever. Then came the night of the storm. Kenji had been pushing himself harder, walking longer, meditating deeper. Fatigue clawed at him like a living thing, relentless, mocking. His legs ached, his mind screamed, and every instinct urged him to stop, to give in. But he remembered the river, the stillness, Musashi's words. Face it. Train it. He stepped outside into the pouring rain, letting it soak through his clothes, drenching his hair. He ran, not fast, not with glory, but with attention. With each footfall, he focused on the feeling of his body moving, the breath filling his lungs, the energy flowing through him. He felt exhaustion confront him, test him, but he did not yield. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs screamed, until he could barely move, and then he stopped. And in that silence, soaked to the bone, he realized something extraordinary. He was awake. Truly awake. Not just moving through life, but alive in it. The exhaustion hadn't vanished. It still whispered. But now, he had learned its language. He could meet it, understand it, and flow with it. He had begun to awaken the strength Musashi spoke of, not a borrowed strength, not a fleeting spark, but a deep, grounded power that arose from presence, discipline, and attention. Kenji returned home that night, shivering, dripping, exhausted, but not defeated. He sat by the window, staring at the city, and felt a strange gratitude for every day he had wasted, every moment of fatigue he had endured. They had brought him here, to this moment, to this awakening. And he knew, in his bones, that the journey was far from over. There were still battles ahead, days when his mind would scatter, nights when his body would protest, moments when he would doubt everything. But now, he understood. Fatigue was not an enemy. It was a teacher, a guide, a mirror showing him where he needed strength, where he needed attention, where he needed presence. And for the first time, Kenji felt ready to truly stop feeling tired. He realized he would have to face himself completely. Every weakness, every fear, every shadow. And deep down, he knew the hardest part was yet to come. The morning sun fell gently across Kenji's small apartment, spilling gold across the floorboards. He opened his eyes and felt it, not the shallow, fleeting energy of caffeine or adrenaline, but something deeper, steadier, alive. A calm alertness that had once been foreign to him. For the first time in years, he did not wake tired. Not because the world had changed, but because he had. Kenji rose slowly, feeling the subtle strength in his body, the clarity in his mind. Musashi's words echoed in the quiet room, the mind must be like water. He had struggled to understand them before, but now their meaning settled in him like sediment in a riverbed. Life would always be turbulent, always demanding, always unpredictable. But he had learned to flow. To move without resistance. To meet fatigue not as a burden, but as a companion, a teacher, a guide. The change was not instantaneous, nor was it miraculous. It had been forged through months of patience, observation, and relentless attention. Kenji had learned to notice the small signs, the tension in his shoulders, the restless ache in his legs, the fog in his thoughts. He learned to respond with care, not force, with presence, not avoidance. He rested when necessary, moved when necessary, ate, breathed, reflected, and above all, he paid attention. It was in these moments of attention that he discovered life again. Walking along the river, he noticed the shimmer of sunlight on the water, the way the wind stirred the cherry blossoms, the quiet rhythm of the city waking up. He laughed freely at a stranger's joke, he played his guitar with care, he painted without expectation. The world was no longer background noise. It was vivid, alive, and demanding his full engagement. Yet the true test came in the ordinary moments, the ones that had broken him before. At work, when emails piled up and deadlines loomed, he did not panic. He moved deliberately, task by task, aware of his energy, careful not to waste it on worry. He said no to meetings that drained him, to conversations that depleted him, to habits that weighed him down. Each small boundary was a victory, a reclaiming of his own life. And the fatigue? It had not disappeared. It still arrived, a subtle whisper, testing him, reminding him of his past weaknesses. But now, it was no longer terrifying. He welcomed it, observed it, understood it, and allowed himself to rest and flow around it. He had transformed exhaustion from an enemy into a teacher, a companion in his journey rather than a chain dragging him down. One evening, Kenji found himself back at the river, where it all had begun. The water was calm, reflecting the twilight sky, and he felt a profound stillness settle within him. He closed his eyes and listened, to the river, to his heartbeat, to the world. And he realized that he had arrived somewhere he could not have imagined months ago, a place of alignment, presence, and quiet power. He thought of Musashi, not the legendary swordsman alone, but the man who had faced battles unseen, who had trained his mind, body, and spirit with relentless attention. Kenji understood now that life was the same. Every day contained battles, challenges, and fatigue. But each could be met with awareness, intention, and discipline. Strength was not given. Strength was awakened. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, Kenji felt a deep gratitude for the exhaustion, for the struggle, for the nights he had sat awake wrestling with himself. Without it, he would not have awakened. Without it, he would have remained a shadow, drifting through life without presence or purpose. A gentle smile curved his lips. He felt alive, not in bursts, not in flashes, not in temporary highs, but in a steady, enduring current of awareness. He had learned to flow, to move with intention, to meet fatigue with understanding rather than resistance. And in that flow, he discovered the true meaning of vitality, not endless energy, not escape, not shortcuts, but the courage to face oneself fully, to train the mind and body patiently, to awaken strength where none seemed to exist. Kenji returned home that night, the city quiet and silver in the moonlight. He sat by his window, book open, pencil in hand. He wrote down the lessons of his journey, not for anyone else, but for himself. Each word was a reminder, a reinforcement, a quiet promise. He would honor this awakening. He would continue to listen, to move deliberately, to meet life fully. And as he closed the notebook and looked out at the night sky, he felt something extraordinary, a deep, unshakable peace. The exhaustion that had once defined him was no longer his master. It had become a guide, a teacher, a silent witness to his transformation. He had learned to stop running, stop resisting, stop forcing, and in that stillness, he had found the energy, clarity, and vitality he had sought all along. Kenji took a deep breath, steady and full, and whispered into the night, "I am awake." And for the first time in years he truly was. The lesson was simple yet profound. Life would always test him, always tire him, always demand from him. But strength, presence, and vitality were not gifts handed to the weary. They were forged, patiently, intentionally, in the quiet, deliberate practice of being fully alive, and that was the awakening he would carry forever.